And so what we're going to try and do is chew through in 1 hour 32.5 ideas. So I've got to keep my skates on because I've got to allow enough room at the end of the presentation for some questions as well. Because no, I'm not going to give you a handout though. What will happen though is in about a week's time they'll post these slides on the CBAA website though. You're off the hook. Okay, so I've got to chew through 32.5 and there's no point just standing around at the front of the room looking silly. Let's get down to business. Here's the one thing I promise you. You will walk away with at least one thing you can take back to your radio station on Monday. At least one. And if you don't take away one, I'll be stunned. Ken, my friend over there from Gippsland, will tell you that you normally take away 4 or 5 ideas, Ken. Fair comment? Yeah. Okay, number one, some research I want to share with you first up. And as you can see, it's on the screen. Think about this. As you can see on the screen, something like 75% of media salespeople, in other words, people that sell media for radio, television, newspapers, and community radio, 75% of them said that prospecting or finding new sponsors or new clients is their biggest challenge. Is that your biggest challenge for your organisation as well? Yeah? Yeah? Finding prospects. Here's something else you might like to consider. Research shows that in normal business, in the real world, not the media world, something like 10 to 12% of that business's customers or clients are lost year on year. 10 to 12%. Here's the scary one. In media, they tend to lose 20+% of their sponsors or advertisers year on year. I've worked with groups where it's been 40%. Nearly half the work that they do every year goes down the gurgler, but it's at least 20%. So once again, the question I pose to you, if prospecting is your challenge, the next one is how many sponsors does your business lose year on year? Because there's a way to avoid that, there's a way to get on top of that, and some of these ideas today will help that not happen in the future. So, some research to kick off. Number 2 in my list of 32.5 is all about effective prospecting. And I believe if you're really serious about getting some extra business for your organisation, it looks like this. It's all about finding the right company to work with. And it's also about the keeping component. It's no use putting all the hard work into finding someone that you'd like to do business with and not keeping them over the longer term. And then growing as well. So they're not just doing the same thing week on week, year on year. And here's the last one, which I think is absolutely critical. It's all about finding and keeping and growing the right sponsor. I'm going to talk about what's the right sponsor really soon. So that's the second one. It's all about those things. And I want to show you this thing called the selling cycle, because if you don't get the selling cycle, you won't have some kind of a plan. And it looks relatively complicated, but it ain't. It's really simple. So here's the simple selling cycle. You start right up the top. First thing you do, when you need to find a new sponsor, you do some kind of research. You go into the marketplace, you pick up the phone, you knock on a few doors, you go to try and find somebody who you can work with. And then you want to qualify them. You want to see if they fit you and you fit them. Next thing is to set up a meeting of some sort. So you can talk to them and they can talk to you, and you can tell them about the fabulous things that your radio station does. And then you need to have what I call a face-to-face needs uncovery. In other words, a business conversation that basically helps you find out what that business needs to do, what they want to do in their business. And then you might leave their office or their shop and go back to the radio station, or you might have something up your sleeve. You present a proposal, an idea, some thoughts. Handle objections, do a bit of negotiating and do a bit of closing, and there it is. You then follow up and keep the retention. But here's the thing about the sales cycle. It doesn't just stop like that. Starts all over again. The minute you've done it, you've got to do the same process all over again. Round and round and round, the sales cycle goes. So you've got that cycle happening all the time. And if you skip a step, ultimately you won't be as effective at finding sponsors for your business, for your radio station, as you could be. So keep that in mind, because all of those steps I'm going to cover in my 32.5 ways for you to secure sponsorship revenue. All of those things are going to be covered. So, a couple of cameras up. I'll just wait. Okay, I've got to keep going, Okay, number four on our 32.5 is really important. And it's all about finding sponsors. And while this is the number 4 slide, there's 4 areas I really want to talk about. There's cold calling, and if you want to do some cold calling, by gee, you're going to do it hard, but you're welcome to it. And then there's warm calling, and then there's referrals, and then there's also networking. First things first, finding sponsors. Where do you find a potential sponsor? There's a whole list of things, and here they come. Well, you could talk to and have a look at other radio stations, either commercial radio stations or community radio stations. Pick up the local community newspaper, not a metro paper. If you're in a smaller market, obviously the local paper will help you. Particularly in the smaller markets, the local TV stations carry a whole lot of local advertising. Yellow Pages, who uses Yellow Pages anymore? But you'll still find some clients in it who waste their money there. Online directories, obviously Facebook, all of those places, direct mail, flyers, all of those places are where you will find potential sponsors of your radio station. Only problem is they don't know you and you don't know them. So I call those cold sponsors. You've got to do some cold calling. In other words, you're going to pick up the phone and say, hello, I'm Stephen from XYZ radio station. How are you? Hello? Hello? So it's cold, they don't know you. Or you're going to knock on the door and they're going to close the door in your face. I believe there's a better way to go and find sponsors for your radio station. But if you want to do it that way, by the way, it works, but there are better ways to do it. And that's to find what I call warm sponsors. Somebody that has some kind of relationship with you or your radio station that you can capitalise on so that you can build your base of sponsorship. So where the heck do you find these warm sponsors, as I call them? Well, here they come. The first one's an easy one. Any local business who provides some kind of service to your little radio station. If someone maybe cuts the grass out front, even if they do it for free as part of their contribution, maybe they'd be interested in becoming a sponsor. Someone who laid the carpet, if you could afford some carpet, maybe you needed some carpet and someone donated carpet, but they still laid it in the radio station. There's an opportunity. Someone that maybe does printing. All of those little those service type things, people that provide services to your radio station, they are an opportunity because they know who you are. It's a warm conversation. How about sponsors you've done business with in the past, or businesses that have that you've tried to do business with and you weren't successful? They know who you are. You've had a conversation with them, so you can pick the phone up. Business people on your membership database. Many community stations have membership drives. You've got a database of people that in many cases donate money or support you. Why not them? They know who you are. They know what you stand for. Big chance they even listen to your radio station. Supporters of charities or community groups that you support as well, because the real core of a great community radio station, of course, is all that great community work that you do. But many businesses in the local community also support those same charities. They think the same way you do. And then why not, when it gets as basic as this, the friends, the relatives, the contacts of staff members and volunteers that work with you as well. Because everybody knows somebody, if I can use that phrase. So that's where I think you'll find more opportunity than just knocking on the door in a cold way. Here's 2 more bonus places that you can find warm sponsors. The first one is approach previous prospects who you weren't able to sell. Remember, just because they told you to go away last year or the year before doesn't mean they still think the same way. Maybe things change, managers change, owners change, businesses change, needs change. Think about that. And then the other one is to hold an in-house event at your radio station. Believe it or not, people still love to come to radio station and have a look to see what's going on. They love it. So have an in-house event. But here's the key. You've got to have a valid business reason. You just can't invite people there just for the sake of coming along. Give them a reason to come along. And there's 2 bonus ways. But all of those ways are what I call the warm prospecting. Then there's networking. If you are not networking, you're crazy. You're crazy, because once again, it's a great way. Often you'll get a glass of wine or a beer if you drink. If you don't, a glass of Coca-Cola or a cup of tea, and you can meet people that have similar likes that you do. And there's a whole lot of areas where you can find warm sponsors. Every town has got a Chamber of Commerce. So why not the Chamber of Commerce? Go along to their after 5 events. Introduce yourself. Make sure you've got some business cards. They don't cost much money. Business clubs and associations, you can see the list there. Church groups, networking organisations. There's 3-4 key networking organisations, and all they do is introduce others to others of a like mind. And they're always keen to get exposure. So if you can't afford a membership with them, maybe if you give them some advertising, you can get on board with them as well. Schools, colleges, trade shows, friends, relatives. So that's the next one. So we've got cold calling, we've got warm calling, then we've got networking. All of those things add up to the right place to find sponsors. Think about it. Whether you've got a huge radio station or a small one, there's always a core group of people that work or volunteer there. Use their networks to try and expand your network as well. And finally, there's what I call referrals, and this is number 7 on the list. And referrals is the most fun that you can have with your clothes on. Giving and gaining referrals. Looks like this. Remember, by the way, you're not begging for business. You're not begging, you're just asking for a referral. You're asking customers if they know someone that you can help. If they're happy with what you've done, if they enjoy the experience of being a sponsor with your organisation, why the heck wouldn't you say, can I help one of your business associates as well? If you can fix problems, they'd love to know about it as well. And don't forget, there's really 2 important things. Seek and give referrals. It's got to be a 2-way street. If you're going to ask someone for a referral, and let's say they're a furniture business, if you've got friends, relatives, associates, send them to that furniture shop as well, and make sure the owner knows you've done it. It cuts both ways. Seek and give referrals. And finally, there's 2 types of referral. One is much more powerful than the other. First one is a recommendation. In other words, the businessman says to you, yes, Steve, I think you've done a pretty good job. If you call my friend Fred, Fred would love to talk to you. And that's nice, because you can pick up the phone to Fred and say, Bill said I should call you because I've done some business with Bill. But the next one is even more powerful, where the businessman says, I'll call Fred for you. Hi, Fred. I've got Steve with me right now. You don't know who he is, but we work with him and his radio station. I'm going to send him round. You need to talk to this guy. That's the most powerful kind of referral. And you can get that. It's not impossible. As I said, it's not begging. It's simply mutually reciprocal relationships, if I can describe it that way. So you've got referrals, you've got warm calling, you've got cold calling if you want to knock yourself out, and then there's networking. So they're all the places that you can find a potential sponsor. Think about it. Think about it. Talk to your friends, talk to your associates in the radio station, because more brains equal more ideas. So we've talked about the places. Let's move on. I talked before about finding and keeping and growing the right sponsor. So who the heck is the right sponsor for your radio station? Here's the places. Here's the target, I call it, for the right sponsor. Number one, they've got to fit your radio station. Number two, they've got to have some money. If they don't have some money, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but that's all it is paved with. So make sure they've got some money. And not only have they got it, they're prepared to part with it to give you some of it as well, because it's no use having the money and not giving it to you. How about that? Who'd have thought? These things happen at the most inopportune times. Remind me later, or will I install it now? Okay. Next one. You enjoy working with them and vice versa. They enjoy working with you. Big chance they listen to your advice. The right sponsor welcomes your advice and accepts it, peer to peer. Their product category works on radio. Not every product category works on radio. I promise you that. 30 years of blood, sweat and tears, and mostly tears, I've learnt that not every category works. And here's the really weird thing. In some towns, some categories work better than other towns. Don't ask me why. Do not ask me why. As a general rule, selling real estate on radio isn't a strong category. But I know on the central coast of New South Wales, for a fact, they sell a whole heap of real estate on radio. So who would have thought? The sponsor's keen to learn more about your station, and finally, they're prepared to give you a testimonial or a referral. Those are the right type of people that you want to work with. If they're not the type of people that you can find, you'll find that things are tough when you're trying to talk to them. They'll be asking about the price. They'll be asking about stuff that's really not effective for you. So make sure you uncover the right sponsor. And then we move on to number 9. What's WIIEM stand for? What's in it for me? It's not a radio station. WIIEM. And the power... It belongs to the person who's got the headphones on. That's WIIEM. That's true. That is true. Okay, here's the power of why. The power of why. Any sales appointment, any sales phone call, any conversation to do with advertising in the game that we're in, it needs to have the why factor in it. Because like it or not, prospects are human, and humans are selfish, and they're going to be asking these questions. Is there any advantage for me in this conversation? Number 2, why the heck should I work with you personally or your radio station? And will there be an ROI, return on investment? Because no one is going to give you the money because they love you. They might like you, but they won't do it because they love you. They want something in return. And the thing I've learned about small, medium type businesses that we mostly work with is the last one. They're looking for an ROI. So think about that. When you're in the marketplace, knocking on the door, think about the old radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? There's got to be something in it for the other guy. Otherwise, he's not going to be talking to you. It's just not worth his time. WIIFM. If you keep that front of mind, if that's the only thing you take away today, it's a really, really important thing. As I said a couple of moments ago, humans are selfish. Like it or not, we all think about ourselves. Next one. Ways to make sponsors confident. Because many times when I talk to various community radio stations and people that are out there either voluntarily or professionally looking for sponsorship, they say, but no one really listens to us. No one trusts us. They're not sure about this community radio thing. And I say it's all about this. You've got to make sure that when you're talking to a businessman, when you're talking to a businesswoman, that they've got some trust factor, that they're confident in what you are saying. And here's a few things that you might like to consider. Number 1, if you're going to knock on the door, if you're going to pick up the phone, if you're going to send an email, be prepared. Be organised, if I want to use that phrase. Don't just pick it up and hope like heck something's going to happen magically when you just start talking. Number 2, involve the prospect early on. Involve them in the discussion. A conversation in business terms should not be just me talking to you. It's got to be both ways. And one of the best ways to involve prospects really early on is to start talking about the creative. What do they like in their advertising? Immediately they start saying, well, I like to do a bit of this and I like that and I don't like that. You've got them involved in a conversation. So involve the prospect early on. Make sure you talk about your other happy sponsors. Drop names. There is nothing wrong with dropping names, because the one thing I was talking to Greg here earlier on, and the one thing I know about small, medium businesses is they are nosy. They like to know what everyone else is doing, the herd mentality. So make sure you tell them who else in your town or your market or on your radio station is happy and is enjoying working with you. And then make sure you ask some questions. Ask questions that are smart, not dumb questions like, oh, can you tell me about your business, please? Because they'll probably say, what, website not working properly? So find some really smart questions to ask them as well. The right questions that will involve them in their business. And then sell ideas. The one thing I can promise you that small, medium businesses love is ideas. They are so busy working in their business, they want an idea to help their business. And I tell you what, they will remember the person that gave them help, will remember the person that gave them an idea. So, ways to make sponsors confident. Then none of this is rocket science. I wish I could tell you I invented this and I'll make $1 million. I'm not. It's all common sense. Most of you know this stuff, but it's really important to revisit it and remember why you do what you do. And finally, emphasise that you're not just here, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. You're not just going to take their money and disappear. That there is something going to happen, that you'll be talking to them on a regular basis to check on that ROI, to make sure that the money that they have given you is not wasted, and that there is a service angle and that there's something going to happen afterwards. Emphasise the service after the sale. Ways to make sponsors confident. So we're at number 10. Got to get to 32. Am I giving you some stuff you can use? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. What sponsors want? This is what sponsors want, I promise you. It's really important. They want agreed results. And many times this is where people get all hung up about agreed results. What, we're going to make a guarantee? No. But here's the thing. In the absence of a set of agreed results, most business people will have abnormally high expectations. I promise you. Oh, we'll just take a couple of ads and we'll have a lineup of people out the front, round the corner and up the street. No, it doesn't work like that. So make sure they know what's going to happen when they advertise. Will it happen tomorrow or will it happen next week? Is it a branding campaign or is it a call to action campaign? What do they expect? Because until you have an agreed set of results, you're in trouble, because I promise you, most business people have higher expectations than you can actually deliver. A demonstrable ROI. If they're going to give you $1,000, they're going to give you $500, they're going to give you $250, they've got some expectation in their mind of what they're going to get back. Whether it's just get their money back is fine, but most business people want more than that. So know what the ROI is. Put together a service plan with them. I'll be talking to you every week on the phone. I'll call you every second day. I will see you once a month. Whatever it happens to be, have a service plan. Give them valid advice and form a partnership. And finally, once again, ideas. The more ideas you can give to sponsors, the more ideas you can give to business people, you'll meet and in many cases exceed their expectations. Number 11. Is how do you work out if a sponsor is the right sponsor? Because I've seen too many people waste too much time talking to businesses they simply should not be talking to. And here's a very simple way to do it. Qualifying prospective sponsors. 1, check their website. If they don't have a website, what does that tell you? Well, it tells me something. It tells me quite likely they aren't really serious about business. And I don't care how small a market they are these days, every business should have some kind of a website. So check their website, have a look at it. It very quickly tells you about what they do, how they run their business. Drive by, old-fashioned, yeah, I know, but have a look how they run their business. Wander in as a customer and then find out what you need to know about the customer decision makers. Who is the owner or the general manager, or who should I be talking to? Who makes the call in this business? Who influences the decision maker? And finally, what should you know about them? So the who and the what. That's the first part of qualifying. Checking, wandering around, knowing who you should be talking to and knowing what you need to know about them. If the guy's a member of the local Rotary Club or the Chamber of Commerce or Apex or Toastmasters or the church, it's really important. You can find a common thread if you know what he or she is doing. And then there's this next one, number 12, the qualification steps, and it looks really simple. M-A-N, that's all you need to remember. 1, do they have the budget? But it's not just the budget. Do they have the available budget? This is the really important thing. Once again, through too many years I've learnt this lesson where I thought the business told me that he spends about $4,000 or $5,000 a year or $10,000 a year. But when the time comes to ask them for the money, they say, oh, but I'm spending it all with insert radio station, television station, newspaper. You've got to find out if the money's available at the moment. So it's find out if they've got the available budget. And you know how much it costs for a campaign on your radio station. So make sure that whatever the budget is, matches. 1 and 1 have got to equal 2. And then the authority. Am I talking to the man or woman that can really sign the cheque? Or am I just talking to someone who influences the man or woman? Make sure you're talking to the authority. And finally, this is the one that's the toughest of the three, is the need. What do they need for their business? Is it inquiries? Is it growth? Is it foot traffic? What do they want and when? Because until you know that, there's no real urgency. You can do number 1 and 2 till the cows come home relatively easily. But you've got to have a set of questions that will help you find the N. Because once you can find out what the need is with the business, then you can ask some smart questions and you can put together a plan for them to deliver on what they need for their business. So think about M and A and N. They are great qualifying steps, and it's not complicated, but the minute you can do that, you then know how you're going to handle this business moving forward. VBR is just as important, and it stands for, anybody heard of VBR before? Valid business reason. The valid business reason for that person to listen to me. Some people call it the elevator pitch. I call it the 30-second commercial. And there's 3 components of a VBR, and it's really simple. Number 1 is what your product or company name is and who the heck you are. Number 2, the problem you solve. And number 3, the benefit of your unique solution. And the VBR, or your 30-second commercial, is used when you first pick up the phone. The VBR is used when you're out networking. You say, "Good day, Greg, how are you? I'm Stephen," and then you do your VBR or your 30-second commercial. It's got to be succinct so the other person knows what you do. Really simple. I work for a radio station and we do a bit of community stuff, and it's a good station, yeah, a lot of volunteers. That's not a VBR. It's got to be nice and crisp because you want to look as professional as they expect you to be. Here's an example, and this is a really simple one you can use. "Hi, I'm Stephen Pead and I work for a unique radio station, XYZ FM. I help businesses like yours to become well known in the local community because we find ways to connect our 15,000 listeners with our business sponsors." That's a VBR. It's as simple as that, because that encapsulates in literally 10, 15 seconds exactly what you could do. Now, should you use that? Of course not. That's mine. But you could use something very, very similar, because you've got to tell men and women when you meet them, either in a networking situation or when you're prospecting or talking on the phone to them, whatever it happens to be, who you are and what you do. Go back to it. the product and the company name, the problem you solve, and the benefit of your unique solution. Steve and Pead, I work for a unique radio station, XYZ FM. That's who I am, and that's the company. I help businesses like yours to become well known in the local community because we find ways to connect our 20,000 listeners with our business sponsors. Really as simple as that. And that then opens up a whole lot of doors. People will say, how? How do you do that? Or why do you do that? When do you do that? Who's XYZ FM? That's fine. That's great. Because now you've got a conversation going. So it's really important that if you're going to go into the field and find some revenue, find some sponsorship dollars, that you've got something like this nailed down. Why? Because you are up against every other media salespeople in your market. Television guys, the newspaper guys, the radio guys, they're all doing something like this. So you've got to try and compete on an even footing. It's no use saying, oh, we're the community radio guys, we don't have to be as professional. I'm sorry, I disagree with that. I think you've got to be even more professional. You've got every right to. You serve a very important component of the market, so why the heck wouldn't you go out there and look as professional as you could? And I forgot the last part, and the outcome advertising that really works. I should have put that up before so you can take your photos. So that's a typical valid business reason or 30-second commercial. Okay, how do you do this? How do you actually go and do some qualifying? There's a couple of tools. First tool is phone and email. When you are prospecting, who prefers to use the phone? Who prefers to use email? 50-50. What do you use first, Greg?
I use phone.
Phone first? Who uses phone first or email first? Phone first, okay. Who uses email first? Okay, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just that some people do it the other way around or the other way around. Here's the thing though. These days, according to Salesforce, the average business people send and receive 115 emails every day. So there's a lot of traffic and there's a lot of stuff that's going off into the junk mail and the spam filter as well. I think the most effective way to get hold of people is still by the phone because you can still cut through the clutter. Of course, the challenge is to actually get the right person on the phone. But that said, most younger, and there's not a lot of younger people in the room, but most younger salespeople prefer to use what first, do you think? Email. 100%. Why? Because they don't think they'll get as rejected as they would be if someone hangs up on the phone. Because if someone doesn't return an email, that's not as rude as someone hanging up in your ear. But you're still rejected. There's still nothing happening. So when you look at the two as tools, it looks a bit like this. The simple truth is if you do what everybody else does, you'll probably get the same result as what everybody else is getting. And here's the real fact about emails. Most media, particularly younger ones, most media salespeople prefer to use email. There's less rejection, as I said a couple of moments ago. And email open rates are 14.1%. But I think it's really important to use your phone because you need to have a way to connect personally with your prospective sponsor. But here's the thing, if you're going to use the phone, you need to create a script. You need to have that VBR that I showed you before, and then you've got to have a script or a roadmap. I don't want you to follow it word by word, but you've got to have some direction to take the phone call, because if you don't have that direction, you'll just wander aimlessly, and it won't be an effective phone call. And don't forget, when you're on the phone the first time to a businessman or a businesswoman, all you're selling is a meeting. All you're selling is a meeting. You're not selling yourself, you're not selling your radio station, because until you get that face-to-face meeting, it won't be as effective as it could be. So it's really important to make sure that if you're going to use those two strategies, I think the phone is much, much more effective. How about voicemail? What happens when you call somebody's mobile and they give you straight into a message? They've clicked off. Do you leave a voicemail or not? And this is a really thorny strategy, but it's important. Firstly, question, do you leave a message, and when? Do you maybe phone back a little later on instead of the first time, or do you leave the message the first time and try a couple more times, or what? But I say the first thing you do is listen to their message, because many times I've heard messages from business people that says, "Hi, I'm away on annual leave at the moment, I won't be back for 2 weeks." Well, it's a bit stupid to leave a message because they ain't there. "Hi, I'm in a meeting for the next 2 hours." Some people update their voicemails really regularly. So have a good listen to their message and then respond with a message of your own, a message that I call a message of clear intent. Let them know why you are calling. And once again, give them one and only one compelling business reason for the call. The reason for my call is to share some recent research on community advertising. The reason I'm calling is to let you know how you could grow your business in the next 12 months. The reason I'm calling is I've got some ideas that many businesses in the local community have used to their advantage. Whatever it happens to be, find out the one compelling reason that that person just may come back to you. So when you're going to leave the message, make sure it's a valid message. Have it written down. And if you haven't got something organised, just hang up. It's better to hang up and they wonder who the call's from than leave a message and prove that you're an idiot. So it's really important. Leave a positive, strong message. Number 16, we've gone from the phone to the email to the voicemail, face-to-face meetings, and it's my favourite. I think it's the most effective way for humans to communicate, and in business, it's the best way to get your results. But here's some research firstly. All you've got 7 seconds. You walk in, you sit down, you stand up, you shake their hands. All you've got is 7 seconds. Unfortunately though, only about 2% of sales occur in that very first meeting. As you can see, something like 80% of sales occur much, much later. You've got to build your relationship with the businessman or woman. 57% of prospects these days, when you make contact with them, will check out the online profile of you. If you send them an email, leave them a message, or whatever you're going to do in prospecting, one of the first things they'll do, more than half, will check out your profile to see who you are. And here the final one is this one. More people like stories than statistics. So if you want to go around talking about stats and, we've got 10,000 people doing this and 5,000 of this and 2% and 3% and 24%, most business people, in fact, most people like a good story. 5% remember statistics. So you've got to engage people at a human level, talking about things that will excite them, will interest them. So research on face-to-face meetings is really important. And as Norman Vincent Peale, one of the great speakers, had this to say, be interesting, be enthusiastic, but don't talk too much. One of the most effective ways to have a great face-to-face meeting is to let them do the talking. The more they talk, the more you listen and learn. That's right. The more they talk, the more you listen, and the more you'll learn. So you've got to find a way to unlock that conversation in a face-to-face meeting. So how do you build relationships? Where are we up to? Number 17. How do you build relationships with prospective sponsors? Here's a few ways. One, and it's really important, I believe, to sell and resell the sale. If they've decided to go ahead and work with you, make sure that you avoid what's known as buyer's remorse. Because don't forget, the minute you get someone to say, yeah, I'm going to do some advertising, and they sign a little chit or whatever they do in your organisation to approve some kind of advertising, don't forget people are in their ear. They'll go home and tell their wife, I've decided to do some radio advertising with XYZ FM. Oh, no one listens to community radio. Or one of the reps from another organisation will knock on the door 5 minutes later and they'll tell them they've made a mistake. Or they'll talk to their accountant, oh, you shouldn't do that, that's a waste of money. So make sure you sell and resell what they've bought so you don't suffer from buyer's remorse. Know their expectations. We've talked about this before. Provide exceptional customer service. And in truth, and here's the truth about where you guys sit, you do have to stand out from the crowd. You can't provide okay customer service because sometimes, I know it's cruel, but you do fight with one arm tied behind your back. And so you've got to go above and beyond. So great customer service. Communicate and communicate and communicate. You can't over-communicate when you're working and using someone else's money. and treasure complaints. If someone's got a problem, jump on it. Let them tell you the full story. Let them vent. There's nothing better than dealing with a complaint. So ultimately, after you've solved the problem, they will love you for it. If you can fix a problem quickly, people like it. What they hate is if you fob off the complaint or treat it as if it's not really important. Find ways to provide referrals to them, and they will find ways to provide referrals to you. If you can, if your radio station can do it, find a way to implement a loyalty program. If people advertise on a regular basis, what can you do for them? I mean, coffee shops can do it. For every 10 cups of coffee, I get a free one. Why couldn't you do something like that? It doesn't cost much. But it rewards loyalty. And finally, if your structure in your organisation has a manager or a president or something like that, involve them, particularly if they have a high profile in the community. Because once again, it reinforces in the sponsor's mind that you are real, that you're part of the town, part of the market that you happen to operate in. So make sure that you're continually building your relationships. Don't forget what I was saying a second ago. You're working with one arm tied behind your back. Try and make sure that you can overcome that disadvantage against your mainstream media competitors. How about lost sponsors? Anybody lost a sponsor here? Yeah, unfortunately it's the truth. How many on average do businesses lose? 20%. Yeah, about more than 20%. Radio stations, television stations, newspaper lose each year. So how do you recover lost sponsors? Because it's not hard. You can't stop it. It's going to happen. But how do you stop it happening all the time? We've talked about the percentage, because you know it costs in time as much as money, 5 to 8 times as much to find a new one as it does to keep a friend. Make sure that you have the relationship. Even if they're not advertising with you at the moment, you can still have a business relationship with them. That's okay. It just reinforces that you're in the market. You're not always selling. Sometimes you're just doing a bit of PR. Nothing wrong with that. And find out why businesses have stopped. Go back to the radio station on Monday if you haven't done this exercise, and go back for the last 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, and look at the list of businesses that used to advertise with you and don't anymore. Now, some will have gone out of business. Maybe some had a falling out. That's not a problem. If they had a falling out, remember, treasure complaints. You can rescue that stuff. And there's going to be a whole lot of other things. But most business people over time will forgive and forget if you try and put a plan in place to overcome those challenges that you've had. So don't let them slip away, and try and minimise that 20-25% that I was talking about. Try and make it 10% that most businesses face in mainstream type businesses. How about number 19? What's the time, by the way? Oh, I'm on time. Beautiful. Number 19, I should say, appointment setting. I talked before about, you've got to get in front of somebody. So how do you set an appointment? Here's 6 tips. These 6 tips work for me. If you want to take them, I hope they'll work for you. First one is, I go back to the human element. You will get people's interest by being interesting. If you're just all about you, if it's all about you and your radio station, they won't be interested. But if it's about them, or there's an interesting spin you can put on it, they'll be interested. Number 2, listen for information and feedback and buying signals. Listen really carefully. Guys, we are not necessarily good listeners. The ladies are much, much better listeners than we'll ever be. So we've got to tune in, because unfortunately men tend to be too busy thinking about the next thing they're going to say, whereas women have this ability to actually focus and really listen to what's going on. It's the unsaid, as they say, that's more important than the said. Get to the point quickly. Business people are busy, we know that. And if it's no to the appointment, that's okay. However, is it no now or is it no forever? It could be just no now. I'm really busy, I can't talk to you. I've got 5 customers in the shop. Oh, that's no later. Okay, I'll talk later. When is a good time? Check the details. If someone gives you an appointment, read it back. Okay, so I'll see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Is that right? Let's put it in our planner. Great. And you're on the corner of Main and 51st Street. Great. I'll see you at 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And ultimately, if you're going to make appointments, try and do it in a block. Try and take some time to do it in a morning or an afternoon, however you work. If you're only part-time in putting sponsorships into the market, make sure you have a focused time to put together your appointments. But stick to it. Procrastination is the killer in setting appointments. And then, I could spend 2 hours on this subject alone, handling objections. But in truth, there's only a couple of real objections, and you've got to find a way to deal with them. So what is an objection? I believe it looks like this. Objections sometimes aren't really N-O. Sometimes it is just K-N-O-W, and that's the stupidity of the English language. Sometimes business people will say no because they don't know. They don't know if you're the right person to deal with. They don't know if your radio station is the right radio station to use. Sometimes they just don't know. Like, I'm just not sure. And so they'll throw up a stupid objection. It sounds like no, but sometimes I need to know more. Or I need to know more about you. Or I need to know more about what we're talking about. So the real challenge is to uncover the no or the no. And here's the simple format. I showed this to everybody last year, and there's a fair few people who haven't seen it before, and it looks like this. The first words you come out of your mouth after somebody says, oh, no, I don't use community radio. The first words that come out of your mouth is, oh, I understand. What does understand mean? It's empathy. So you're on there, so yeah, I get it, I understand. But just so I'm clear, or if you want to use the words, just so I understand further, when you say you don't like community radio or don't use community radio, can I ask why? Or how come? Or what's given you, what's formed that opinion? In this particular case, it's price. Let's use the example. No, I'm not giving you $30 for every 30-second commercial. Okay, I understand. But just so I'm clear, is it the price or is it the value that you're concerned about in not agreeing to that? Or, if it's results, oh, I don't think I'm going to get an outcome of this advertising campaign that you're putting together. Yep, sure, I hear you, or I understand. But just so I'm clear, is it the results you're worried about? Or is it the price? Or is it the value? Just so I'm clear. Now, the minute you use the word I understand, it disarms most people because you've immediately gone from adversarial to I'm sitting over here. Look, I understand. We're in this together. We're working together on this. And it's a really simple way to overcome objections. And after you've dealt with it, the most important thing is that. Shut up. Because I've seen so many salespeople talk themselves into a sale and then keep going and talk themselves right back out of it again. So if you answer an objection and ask a question, I've played the shot, your turn. You're going to serve me or what? See what happens. Because it's amazing when the silence prevails. Well, you know what I mean. Well, I understand what you're saying, but I wasn't quite clear. Shut up. See what happens. Because many times people will say, well, I just wanted to tell you that. Yeah, okay, great. So why don't we move on? The other way you can deal with it is that little cartoon with the one called Feel, Felt, Found. Some of you may have, heard of that one before as well. It's another way to deal with objections, like this. Someone says, I'm not paying that kind of money for your radio station. Look, I can understand the way you feel. Understand and feel. I've spoken to other business people who felt the same way. However, after I've explained the advantages and we've worked together for a couple of months, what they've found is that actually it's not the price, it was the value they were concerned about, and they got great value for money and the results were much, much better than expected. So either of those ones will work. It's not the answer to the objection. Because many people will tell you, oh, you've got to know what the answer is to the objection. To, I'm not interested, or I want to think about it, or you're too expensive. It's not the answer, it's the way you deal with it. Because it's a bit like when we were shopping. I'm walking through a shop, and I look at this glass, and Greg says, as a shop person, he'll say, may I help you? And what will I say? I'm just looking. Same thing. Just interested. No, I just want to think about it. No, you're too expensive. Most objections are reflex. So it's not really the real answer. So one of those two formats will help you get to the root cause, what the real issue is. Number 21 is asking questions. If you can nail this, you'll be a superstar. And here's 5 great questions. Hopefully, 2, 3, 4, 5. I won't go through them because they are all pretty simple. But they're better than that dumb question like, say, can you tell me about your business? Can you tell me how you generate inquiries? Because the one thing that media can do is generate inquiries. In fact, that's all we can do. We can't sell anything. And there's 3 or 4 others there. And as I've offered before, the last 2 years I've done presentations. If you want to email me, I'll send you 50 more for free, just because I'm a good guy. Yeah. And don't forget, these slides will be up on CBAA website real soon as well. But you've got to find some really good questions, some questions that engage businessmen and women. Every time I do a training session, I do not know why most people say I need to do something on time management. And time management is really, really simple. It looks like this. There's a couple of time killers, and most of you know what the big one is. Checking emails and checking what's happening on your phone, your computer every 5 minutes. The world will not stop. It's okay. And some of the most effective time managers I've seen cluster everything. Not having a plan and being totally reactive, procrastination, we'll put that off till later, and unproductive meetings. So you've got to have some kind of a plan. And if you're like me, you are easily distracted. I like to do things that I like to do. And we're all like that. Sometimes we get distracted, but you've got to look and be focused at what you've got to do. And here's a couple of tools. 1, find out when you work best. I hate mornings. I hate mornings, but I love afternoons. I'm my most productive right now. But some people are super productive at night. Find out when you're at your peak, and that's when you can work best. Lists and prioritising, it's been around for a long time. Email and phone management. Cluster your phone calls in a group, cluster your emails in a group. Make sure if you are part-time or full-time in whatever role you are doing, you do some call planning. Know when you are going to be going where. And if you look after 1 or 2 people, delegation is very important. And the last one, I could spend an hour on that one as well. Goals. If you don't have a goal, you won't get to where you want to go. What's that old phrase? If you fail to plan, you know what I'm talking about. Number 23 is presenting proposals. Sooner or later, if we do all the stuff we've talked about in the other 22, the time will come to sit down with somebody and show them something. But this is where it all becomes unravelled, because too many people these days just want to send the proposal by email. Simple, you won't get rejected, but I'll guarantee that very few of your proposals will be read as well. Always do your proposal presenting face to face. Always, always, always. Don't accept it. If the business person's serious about doing business with you, they'll want to meet with you. Take them through it before you give it to them. Talk about it. Don't give them the proposal, because the minute you give them the proposal, what page will they turn to? Yeah. They'll look at the price while you're trying to talk about what you're going to do. So make sure you take them through that first before you give them the copy. Invite questions, and don't forget, one of the best questions you can ask is, how does it feel? Not what do you think? Because selling is an emotional thing, not a cerebral thing. So we don't want them to think about it. How does that feel to you? Does that feel good? Yeah, I like that idea. Good, great. And of course, after you've presented a proposal, seek some kind of closure. So what are we going to do now? Well, obviously one thing could be we're going to buy it, but that's not always the way. I just need to talk to my accountant. Or can you come back tomorrow and show it to my accountant? Or I need to do this, or I need to do that. But get some kind of closure so you know what the next step is. And there's a simple proposal format that if you follow that, your proposals will look schmick, and it's simple. Each one should only take a page. There should be a maximum of 6 pages, absolute maximum. Cover page, which says this is the company I'm talking to, a quick station overview, background of what the discussion was about, the objectives, what you're going to sell, and how much it's going to cost. I've seen a couple of smart salespeople put the investment on page 2. Why? Well, they're going to look at it, so you may as well put it right up the front. Just another way to do it. Negotiating. Sooner or later, after you've presented your proposal, they're going to want to negotiate. And I believe there's just a couple of things that you need to make sure. Firstly, you've got to have a plan or an outcome. You've got to seek a win-win or a win and you don't lose so much. In negotiating, it's not always win-win. It can be, I win and you don't lose a lot. You don't want it to be the other way around. You win and I don't lose too much. That's not quite as good. But a win-win is always the best. What will you trade? Because it's the old concession for concession. If you give something, they have to give something. I'll tell you what, I can do that for $250 if you pay me cash up front today. How's that sound? Done. So, concession for concession. What are the consequences if you give stuff away or they give stuff away? What solutions are you looking for and what's your walk-away point? You've got to know if you're going to negotiate with someone, sooner or later, you've got to say, sir, it's been a pleasure. I'm sorry, we can't do this. It's not aggressive, it's just we can't do it. Sometimes you just can't do what some people want you to do. So make it easy for yourself with a quite clear pattern. How about your audience? Because this is one of the most frustrating things for you guys, and it really shouldn't be. Selling your radio station should be relatively easy. And I know the CBAA have done some research and you've got audience numbers and all that type of thing. I don't think you should go there. I really don't. Because people remember stories, they don't remember statistics. And commercial radio is famous for it. I grew up in it. We will give you statistics till they come out your ears. And you know what? I think I've sold more without statistics than I have with, because you see the people's eyes, they start to glaze over and go, oh yeah, sure, you're number one. Everybody's number one. Heard it all before.
Do you think you can combine them?
I don't know. If you really want my answer, no. I believe that. Remember, people remember stories, not stats. Create a relatable station story, because you are community radio stations. That's your big sell. I really think that's your big sell. Now, what do you do? Why do you do it? Who do you do it for? And the last two. Case studies and testimonials are more powerful than any statistic you've ever produced, because they are local business people and they've got results just like you. I was talking to a jewellery store just like you, and here's what I did for them. Pick up the phone and call him. He will tell you the results I got. I am that confident. That's powerful, rather than saying we reach 450,000 people and they're aged 25 to 54 and they do this and they do that. Now, sure, some people will ask you for stats because that's just the way they are, and include them in a proposal if they want it, but don't make that your primary selling tool. I really believe that passionately. Body language. If you're going to do face-to-face selling, there's some key points. This bloke, some of you may have heard of him, back in the 70s, Albert Morabian did some studies, and he found that there are three things in play when we're communicating. One is body language, two are words, and number three is tonality. And obviously, everybody in the room will tell you the most important is body language. But what's the next most important? Is it words or tonality? Tonality. Body language is more than 50%. Half of our communication, more than half of our communication is this stuff. Fair chunk of it is tone and emphasis, and only the words really count for 7%. So think about it when you're in front of people. Think about your body language and the excitement and your enthusiasm and the words that you're using and the tone. And here's the thing. Smile. Smile will win every time. Positive posture. Make sure you engage. Eye contact. Can't beat it. When you're sitting down, what are your arms and legs doing? You're looking like that? Or are you open? Really important. Strong handshake. Men and women. Strong handshake. You can't beat it. These days, whether we like it or not, it implies what? When you've got a strong handshake? Yeah. Implies confidence. And dress for success. I could have come today in a t-shirt and jeans. I would have liked to. But I thought I should get dressed up as a sign of respect to you guys. And if I came in with a pair of shorts and thongs and a t-shirt, what would you think about me? I've only got that first 7 seconds and you might think he probably can't be all that good. At least he tried. He went down to the shop and bought a nice suit. He gave it a crack. So, geez, you're hard. Couple of unbreakable rules at number 27. We're nearly at 32.5 and here they are. These are, I believe, sales rules. Number 1 is keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut and your ears wide open. Questions first, answers second. Number 3, after uncovering the needs, then you tell people what you can do. Not you don't walk in and start telling them what you can do and, oh, by the way, what's your needs? Find out what they want first. Listen to what your prospect isn't saying, guys. The girls are good at this, we're not. Listen to what they're not saying. And then at the end of your discussions, ask for some kind of action, whatever the action is. We'll meet again tomorrow. I'll call you, you'll call me, something. We touched on this very, very early on. Something like 55% of people will go and check your profile after you call them. So where will they find you? Will they find silly pictures on Facebook? Maybe they will. What's your LinkedIn profile like? Because if you have not got a LinkedIn profile and you are trying to do business in the local community, I'm sorry, you're behind the 8 ball straight up. Twitter, YouTube, Google, if they Google your name, what will happen? Will some posts or blogs or, your community involvement come up? Your digital profile these days confirms your credibility. Whether you like it or not, it does. And when you put your business card down, or whether you put it at the bottom of an email, most business people, particularly the under 40s, will go straight to Google or LinkedIn or Facebook or somewhere to check you out. And it better be good, because the weaker it is, it's just like dress, it looks to them like you aren't really credible. Number 29, we've only got a couple to go, and this is really important because most people in media want to talk about what is known as call to action advertising. As most of you know, and if you don't, let me remind you, there's 2 types of advertising: branding and call to action. Branding, what is it? The aim of branding advertising is really quite simple, as you can see on the screen. It's to develop an image or a business name, raise your profile in the community, and branding is generally part of a long-term advertising campaign. You've got to do branding before you can do call to action. Let me explain why. If I walk out the front into the park, Albert Park, and stop the first person that I saw and said, "Hello, I'm Stephen, I'm from Sydney, I'm staying over at the Pullman tonight and I've got a party coming on. Do you reckon many people would come back across the road with me to my party?" No, I might get a smack in the ear, but that's about all I'll get. But if one of you, particularly if you live in Melbourne, saw a friend in Albert Park and said, "We're having a bit of a get-together at the Pullman tonight, would you come?" They will say yes because they know who you are. And branding is how you invite people to your party. In other words, you've got to introduce yourself to the marketplace first. That's why businessmen and women have to brand their business on one medium. There's something called frequency. If you haven't heard of it, it's really important. Frequency or repetition of message is the only way advertising will work, and you have to repeat that message on one given medium on a regular basis, and branding advertising is the best way to do it. And then when you want to do call to action or sale type advertising, you can layer it on top. But you don't do call to action, in other words, have people come to your party till they know what you stand for. Branding first, call to action second. And many of you will have been faced, I'm sure, with business people saying, "Yeah, I'll take half a dozen ads, we'll see how it goes." Shake their hand and say, "Look, it's best if you take the staff for a drink this afternoon at the hotel, because you'll get more benefit from that than those 6 ads. You really will. I don't want to take your money under false pretenses," because that's how you get unhappy sponsors, because we take the money and run. Think about it strategically, and it's hard, it's not easy, I get that. I've done this for a lot of years too, but don't forget, branding before call to action, and the more an advertiser sticks with you and the more they advertise with you over time, they will be effective and they will get results, and you won't lose your sponsors. We're up to number 30, and here's a couple of quick creative tips for radio. Roy Williams, if you don't know this guy, Google him. He is a genius. Loves radio, and he knows how to write great radio as well. And as Roy says, use half as many words, they'll hit twice as hard, and it's a fact. Radio is a very, very theatre of the mind medium, so you've got to use your words carefully. Here's a couple of simple ideas you might like to use. It's all about the message. Avoid clutter, you know, the old KISS principle, keep it simple. Is it branding or call to action? Make sure you know which one it's going to be. Who is it targeted at? And finally, always include the USP. If you do not include a USP in your advertising, it will not be effective. And by the way, friendly service, been in business for 25 years, convenient parking are not USPs. Everyone can say them. So the best way to test a USP is someone else does the same thing, it ain't a USP. Find out the one thing that that business is famous for, put it in every single ad, and they'll have some kind of hope. MSOP stands for what? Minimum Standards of Performance. And once again, I accept that most of you are not full-time sellers of sponsorship. I get that. But you've still got to set yourself some minimum standards of performance. And here they are. Have consistent, positive, energetic enthusiasm. Because the more enthusiastic you are, people will think you're pretty enthusiastic about your product. And if you're enthusiastic about your product, big chance they'll think that you're enthusiastic about their business as well and making it a success. Use a written daily, weekly, monthly plan. Even if you only do this 2 days a week, have a plan for those 2 days a week. And when you are working, have a plan. Meet with 3 businesses every day. Face to face. That's not prospecting, face-to-face meetings. And then call another 5 businesses every day. Set yourself a target. And as I said, if you only do this part-time, and you only do 1 day a week or 2 or whatever it is, extrapolate those numbers. But the more you are committed, the more effective you will be. And finally, if you're just new to this, welcome to a wonderful world. But here's something that I really believe in passionately. Activity is king. If you've never sold media before, activity is king. And in the first 100 days, do 100 face-to-face calls. I challenge you. I promise you, if you're the worst salesperson in the world, you'll make some sales. But if you're pretty good and you use some of these things we've talked about, you'll make more sales than you'll be really surprised how well you've done. Because momentum is everything. How am I going for time? Oh, am I? 32.5. Action and courage. Looks like that. So I hope you found one thing. If you got one thing today, I've done my job. If you got 2, that's fabulous. I hope you enjoyed the session because I loved being with you. I tried to cram a lot in to 1 hour. I tried to get 32.5 things in. I hope just 1 or 2 of them resonated for your business. And more importantly, I wish you good luck in the next 12 months and make a few dollars along the way and make a lot of very, very happy business people in your community successful as well. Thanks a lot.